What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Drew Coat Sports Talk, where we talk about life, sports, and everything in between. I am your host, Cody Johnson. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I am coming at you with a solo episode tonight. The last couple of weeks, Drew was able to join, but he is right now in the middle of his season right now with his new team, and they just had their first game. As I'm recording this on Wednesday, they had it on Monday. It was a hard-fought game. They have a lot to work on, but I sent him a polo after the game, and I told him that the bones are good, and it was really cool to see him coaching on the sideline. So those that are at Sanger West, shout out to Coach Drew if you guys see him around campus. But I am running the show solo tonight, so we have a lot to get through. A lot of news in the NFL, NBA, even in the MLB. It feels like it's summertime almost, where there's news for every major sports league that's happening right about now. But I'm going to try to get through these for you guys, so that way you guys are up to date, and also, you guys can hit me up in the comments about what you guys want to talk about, or what your thoughts are about this news that's going on right about now. So before we get started, though, please go subscribe to us on YouTube. Drew Coat Sports Talk on YouTube. Go find us on social media. We're available on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Twitter, if it's still around. Blue Sky, we're on there. Let's see, YouTube Shorts, you name it, we're probably on it. So go follow us at Drew Coat Sports Talk. Also, if you guys listen to the audio version of this podcast, it's available wherever you get your podcast as well. iHeart, Google Cast, I think Apple Podcast, and Spotify. We're available on all those platforms. So go check us out. We'd appreciate the follow. And thank you guys so much for riding with us on this journey. I can't believe 2024 is almost at an end. We are second week in December, so we only have literally 20 more days left of this month before it is 2025, and it feels like 2024 just started, and before you know it, it is now over. Just like this NFL season, it has come and gone. We're about to start week 15 on Thursday, and for those that are in the fantasy football playoff hunt, you guys are probably about to start your first round of playoffs. Maybe you guys are in your second round already, depending on how your league is working out. So I can't believe we just were joking about fantasy drafts, and now we're talking about the playoffs and bragging rights to winning your league. So good luck to those that are in their playoffs. We're going to start off with some sports news before we jump into week 14 recap of the NFL league, and then as well as week 15 picks. And so some news around the sports league. As I'm recording this, it's Wednesday night. News, I wouldn't say just broke, but it's been announced on Instagram a little while ago. At least that's where I found it, where Bill Belichick will be the new head coach for the University of North Carolina's football program. He went on the Pat McAfee Show earlier this week because it had been cycling in the news. This is how fast it escalated. Drew and I recorded last week, I want to say around Tuesday, and early reports were rumbling about Bill Belichick having conversations, initial interviews for potentially being a head coach with the football program at the Tar Heels. And we had gone literally a week of a lot of experts saying this is nothing. This is probably Bill Belichick's way of leveraging NFL teams, that he's weighing his options. If you guys don't want to, bring him on your staff or look to him as a head coach. And before I can hit record on this episode, I think it's maybe been a week since Drew and I recorded last week. And now Bill Belichick has agreed to be the new head coach to the Carolina Tar Heels. And he had an interesting quote on the Pat McAfee Show that kind of gets us some insight on how Bill Belichick is going to run the program. He says, end quote, if, and he said capital IF for if I was in a college program, it would be a pipeline to the NFL for the players that had the ability to play in the NFL, end quote. And it's very telling. I mean, a lot of NFL aficionados have been harping on the fact that a lot of college programs don't really prepare certain NFL players the correct way for when they get in the NFL. And not only just the ability to play, but, reading defenses, running schemes, depending on what position they play. So it's very interesting to see probably one of the best head coaches of our time ever watching football, essentially taking a position in a college program to where He's going to have to deal with the transfer portal, in a NIL money, which is a new facet of college football that wasn't around probably when Bill Belichick was coming up in the coaching ranks. And to see him kind of take this position is very interesting. And I'm very curious to see if this is kind of the new blueprint, so to speak, on how, a college program is now going to run their program, because Bill Belichick is a very good head coach. Ryan Clark, I believe it was on ESPN's Get Up, had, great remarks about what it's like working with Bill and how excited he is to watch film about games and how he talks to, his teammates and how he encourages them. So I'm very curious to see how Bill Belichick takes this Carolina Tar Heels program and what it looks like. Will they be college playoff bound? I don't know about that. I think we need to see how it all shakes out and the recruiting class that he may get and those kind of things in between. But I think it's very interesting that, Bill Belichick has taken a job like this. I'm pretty certain that he would have had a lot of teams calling him, who may be looking for a head coach to really turn around their franchise, because, Bill Belichick, again, is one of the pivotal parts of the Patriots dynasty that we all look to Tom Brady for, being the GOAT and winning all those Super Bowls. But the head coach that he was with all of those times, except for one Super Bowl, was Bill Belichick. So very curious to see what he does in North Carolina. So we'll definitely keep you guys updated for that. Comment down below what you guys think of all this. If, this is a good idea for Bill, or, if he'll be successful. I'm very curious to see what, former players or what the transfer portal now looks like, knowing that there is a head coach like Bill Belichick that's going to be, available for their student athlete who decide to, play to hopefully get in the NFL. I wonder if it's going to be very similar to how Colorado with Deion Sanders, they seem to be getting a lot of prominent names, and a lot of it is because of the notoriety, the type of environment that, Coach Deion Sanders has established in Colorado. I'm curious to see if Bill Belichick will do something similar to that, but staying true to his blueprint of it being a pipeline to the NFL or post-football playing career, also is what he mentioned during the Pat McAfee interview. So, in other news that has happened this week, Juan Soto has agreed to a major league record 15-year, $765 million contract with the New York Mets. If everyone remembers, Juan Soto spent a season with the Yankees. They went all the way to the World Series, where they lost to the LA Dodgers. Juan Soto looked like he was all about getting as much money as he can for his talents, which, I think it's absolutely right that or fitting, I should say, that he has done that. 15-year deal, 765. That is a daunting number. I was telling this to Drew, and I haven't gotten Drew's feedback or opinion about the signing, about what the Mets got. But, I think I'm just surprised that it got all the way up to 700 plus million, because, obviously just a couple of summers ago, Shohei Ohtani had an MLB record at the moment. I think it was, I think it was like 10 years, 700. And or maybe it was a little bit more or a little bit longer. But regardless, though, Shohei Ohtani had the largest contract a couple of years ago. And, when that happened, it made sense. Shohei Ohtani is a pitcher and a hitter. Obviously, with him having Tommy John surgery, he didn't pitch this past season, although he put up, historical hitting numbers while, helping the Dodgers win a World Series. So, it made sense why Shohei would sign that kind of a big contract. I think what I'm curious about is, I'm not saying that Juan Soto is not a great baseball player. I guess I'm just surprised by how much he got in a short amount of time. And, obviously he's a really young player. He's a really good hitter, not great defensively, which I don't know if that's going to get better now that he got paid all this money. But, I kind of understood it when it came to Shohei Ohtani. With Juan Soto, it could just be because you can't miss out on a player that's really good at the plate. Maybe that was the deciding factor. Does this make the Mets, better? I really don't know. I wish I was more of a baseball aficionado to answer that question, if I'm being truthful. we'll see. It sounds like, though, if you don't know how to play baseball, everyone should go pick up a bat and go do it now, because if you're a half decent baseball player, it sounds like you will get paid a lot of money. And, I think, was it, I forgot who said this quote, but it was somewhere along the lines of baseball is the only sport where you can fail 70% of the time and make the Hall of Fame. And, I think that's very, very, very funny in sense of that comment. And then also too, just seeing the kind of money that MLB continues to pay out to its players and those that MLB teams value a lot, which I brought up the point last week to Drew about if the MLB should have a salary cap, but that was for a completely different deal altogether. So we'll see how this looks. But the Mets payroll right now, it looks about 75% of it is landing on Juan Soto's shoulders. So we'll see how they shape out their roster, I suppose, and how the rest of it all goes. And then it looks like what the Yankees did to combat the Juan Soto signing, was they signed Max Fried to an 8-year, $218 million contract. So they added on an ace of a pitcher to, obviously compete in the AL. They do still have Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, and I think they're looking to add a couple more bats. But a big problem that the Yankees had, obviously, during the World Series is they just didn't play very clean baseball, so to speak. Like, good hitters, but atypical baseball where it's fundamental, they just kind of lacked a little bit. So I'm curious to see what they do to address that, to see if they can still remain competitive in the AL, especially in the division that they're in with the Red Sox. I think they just traded for an ace out of the White Sox. I think it was Corchette, I think his name is. So that's a huge get for them. So we'll see what the rest of the baseball league does now that they're in the winter meetings right now. So all right, so some NBA news. Haven't really talked about some NBA stuff in a minute, and a lot of that is because obviously NFL is in full swing, so that's pretty much what's on the docket for most of our topics on the show. But I thought this was very interesting. So funny enough, for those that have followed Drew Code for a while, Michael Davis, who is the president of Boom Broadcasting, he was a guest on the show back in October. And I found out he was a Miami Heat fan, and I wanted to give him some Miami Heat questions. But at the time, it was easier just to ask some fun questions like wrestling, obviously get his take on the Cowboys as it was happening for a moment. But one of the questions that I was hoping to jot up for Michael when he came on, this was, again, back in October, is I wanted to know, with the Miami Heat, how their slow start had started in the East and how competitive it is now getting. Boston looks like they're, still Boston. The Cavs look like a team that's a lot more relevant. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks, are they going to be able to improve? And they've kind of done some improvement throughout the season. They have looked a lot better than how they started. And then you look at Miami Heat, super slow start, kind of coming into their own, but it just felt like that I don't want to say were hindered by, but it just seemed like that they weren't getting the best out of the team with Jimmy Butler on the team. And again, one of the questions I wanted to pose to Michael, which I didn't get a chance to ask him this, but I wanted to kind of pose the question, should Miami look to trade Jimmy Butler? And now that this news has come out, I think the answer, obviously, it's going to happen. And I think right now is probably at the moment where a lot of teams, like, for example, some of the teams that Jimmy Butler has mentioned that he's very interested in joining, Phoenix Suns, Dallas Mavericks, Golden State Warriors, Houston Rockets. Obviously, these are teams that are, kind of on the cusp of being, a playoff team, a play-in team, and maybe even being true contenders. The Heat, are they going to be true contenders? I don't know, but it looks like if they can get some young assets back, maybe they're looking to also rebuild in the form of draft picks and build around Bam Adebayo. Maybe that's the route that they go. But a team like the Suns getting Jimmy Butler, it gets Jimmy Butler a little bit more excited to play for competitive games, maybe in the sense, Miami, not Miami, Dallas, Golden State. So these are all curious teams. And if I had to choose which one of these teams is probably the best fit for Jimmy Butler, there's two teams I'm kind of leaning towards. One would probably be the Dallas Mavericks. I think with Luka and with Kyrie, and of course, this is if they can retain Klay Thompson. I don't think he would be a part of the deal with Miami, but who knows? That would be an interesting team. I feel like Dallas is a bit small though, and they would be a good running team. Luka, if he needs to have a night off or he needs to defer, you have Kyrie who can be ball dominant or share the ball a little bit. You have Jimmy Butler who can take over games if needed. Jimmy's not a great 3-point shooter, so that really kind of helps the mid-range game. So maybe that's a pretty good fit. And then Houston, I think, is the more intriguing one, which I think is probably the destination I would assume that Jimmy would end up in, because the Rockets have some assets that they can draft picks that they can turn over in, and they're probably more willing to take on the remaining salary of Jimmy Butler. They've got really young players. It seems to be running really good. Udoka, I think that's how you pronounce his name, excuse me, who was the former Boston Celtics head coach, now Houston Rockets head coach. He is a coach that really gets the attention of players that can really get this team moving. And I think it would help to have kind of an alpha in the locker room, such as Jimmy Butler, who can be a team player, but also can lead a team that is full of young players to, if they are playoff contention, or, maybe they can get far enough, could help facilitate their growth in the NBA. Because you got Jalen Green, who's on that team, who is an up-and-coming star, and you pair him with a veteran like Jimmy Butler, who has been to the NBA Finals, who has been to numerous NBA playoffs from both West and the East. So that's a very interesting dynamic to have on the team. So I'm curious to see how that would work. I don't see the Warriors, just because I feel like the Warriors, they need something that is maybe younger than Jimmy Butler. I'm not trying to dismiss Jimmy Butler. I think he's a really good player, but the Warriors, I don't know how it fits fundamentally with how they like to move the ball around. They like to shoot outside shots. I think there's probably another player that's out there. They're talking about a star player that they would want to add. It really depends on the type of player that they are looking to get. Are you looking for like a 3-and-D star? Are you looking for someone that's just going to get the ball and just take over for Steph Curry? Because, Steph Curry can play with just about anybody. And Draymond, obviously, in my opinion, defensively, he's a good player, but emotionally is kind of a liability, just because can we trust that he'll be on the floor towards the end of the season and not, have games put on him for suspension because of technical fouls or flagrant fouls or whatever the case may be. So the Warriors are an interesting one. I don't know if that is a good fit for them. Not that I don't think Jimmy Butler couldn't find his way and fit around Golden State, but I think Golden State might be looking for another player. I would not be surprised if Golden State was in the Zach LaVine sweepstakes. I think that would be an interesting play. I don't think Philadelphia would be interested in giving up Paul George, but if Golden State was desperate, maybe Paul George makes a little bit of sense with that. There's rumors that Golden State would be trying to get LeBron James. I'm just going to say right now, I highly doubt that would happen. LeBron James would have to sign off on that. I think where LeBron James is at in his career, he's not looking to jump to different teams. Golden State plays out of the Bay Area, and obviously Los Angeles is, further south than that. In California, even if you were to drive, it's like a 6-hour drive from one area to the other, just in terms of how to get there. Imagine he's probably taking a private jet. I don't know how often he would want to do that for practices, home games, away games, because truthfully, LeBron James is pretty much established in Los Angeles. Really, if there was a team that could sway the Lakers or LeBron James to go to another team, probably the Clippers, only because they're in the same county, essentially. And, Tyronn Lue's a former coach of LeBron James, who LeBron highly respects. That would be the only one that makes sense, but I doubt the Lakers would do an in-division trade, not like what they did when they gave Zubac to the Clippers, but that'd be the only team that I can see would facilitate that. And I don't know if the Clippers really have any young assets that the Lakers would be interested in retaining to give up LeBron. Plus LeBron, I know he'll never admit this, but essentially helped JJ Redick get the head coaching position for the Lakers. And so to leave him would be kind of rough. To leave Bronny, who's in the Lakers affiliate league or in the G League, that would be a little interesting. So I doubt that we'll see LeBron ever leave the Lakers. I think LeBron is going to be a Laker till the end of his career. he didn't say if he's done after this season. He may give one more season if Bryce James, his son, can get into the league, which maybe, but that's like a big maybe. So we'll see. A lot of factors go into that. But going back to the Jimmy Butler thing, I think Jimmy Butler probably is best suited for the Rockets. I think they are the strongest team to acquire him fairly quickly, because it looks like news is moving pretty quickly once it's been announced. And Jimmy Butler, it sounds like, is all for being traded, change of scenery. So I'd imagine that the Rockets may move pretty quickly. I see Dallas Mavericks being a team that'd be very interested to pull, that would be very quick to pull the trigger as well. And both in Texas. So it sounds like Jimmy Butler is interested in joining a team in Texas. So I would assume one of those two teams. And then continuing on with our NFL news, with the regular scheduled program here with Drew Code Sports Talk. We have week 14 recaps of the NFL season. So for those of you who saw some of these games, I'm only going to pick a couple of games that I thought were very interesting in terms of what the implications were, storylines that kind of intertwine within the NFL. And this is what I have jotted up. So let me know down below what you think of the week 14 matchups and all that other good stuff. So in week 14, of course, I think this is probably the game of the week that I really want to touch base about, which was the Bills losing to the Rams. This was in LA, 42-44. So this was a very high scoring game of the season this year. Josh Allen had an NFL record 6 total touchdowns. He threw for 3 touchdowns and he rushed for 3 touchdowns. Never been done before. So that was incredible to see that feat done. If you had him on your fantasy team, congratulations, you probably won the week. If you went against him, I'm sorry for your loss, because that's essentially what happened. But I think what was interesting is the Buffalo Bills found themselves in a deficit with the Los Angeles Rams, just couldn't get over the hump. And, the Rams and the Bills had a shootout essentially where defense was kind of left behind, and there was no such thing as a punt unit on this in this game. And, the Bills, unfortunately, as much hype as we have been saying, even on this show, about how the Bills are probably the closest thing to compete with the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Maybe this is their year to get into the Super Bowl. For all that we've been talking about, they lose a game like this that they were heavily favored in. If I'm not mistaken, their point spread to win this game was, I think, 4.5 points, I think. And so, both Drew and I last week picked the Bills to win, but we both did acknowledge that the Rams are a tough team. They're going to give them a run for the money, and it could be a close game. Now, did we think that the Rams would outright win? No, but again, the Rams being healthy now have a better, their offensive line now is a lot healthier than when it was in the middle of the season. Puka Nacua is back. Looks like he's right back into the swing of things in how he was doing last year. You have Cooper Kupp that's back to Cooper Kupp form, which is very scary. So the Rams have a 1-2 punch on that side of the ball, and you have Matthew Stafford, who is probably a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you got them going against the Bills. Did we think that the Bills defense was going to give up 44 points? No. But I think that's what happens when you go up against a Sean McVay team, is they are extremely prepared. They will have a really good game plan. And the Rams just straight up beat the Bills. The Bills did everything they can to get back into the game. It just wasn't enough. It was no shot at Josh Allen. I don't know if it was coaching into this, when it played into this, but the question that I would pose, because the Bills essentially lost a game that they should have won, is, can we trust the Bills when it matters the most, when they get into the playoffs, when they get to the Super Bowl? Can we trust the Bills? I think this is very interesting. I was doing some notes for the show, and I went through the history of essentially the Bills and the Chiefs. Because let's be completely honest, when we're talking about can the Bills get through the playoffs, or when we're talking about the Chiefs, can they make it back to the Super Bowl, we are all acknowledging, or at least I will say, I think a majority of us are acknowledging that in the AFC, there's really only one team for both the Chiefs and the Bills who are standing in their way to getting to the Super Bowl, respectively, in their conference, and that is either the Chiefs or the Bills. They are essentially, if they keep going down this trajectory, they are heading to face each other essentially in the AFC Championship game or the divisional round. Essentially, they will have to go through one of each other to get to the Super Bowl. So I did a little deep dive and I did a little digging, and this is going back to 2021. So in week 5 of 2021, Buffalo went to Kansas and they beat Kansas City 38-20. And that was, again, week 5 of the 2021 season. However, Buffalo, again, back in Kansas, this is in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. This was the overtime game where the Bills lost to the Chiefs, and the new overtime rule that was established about being able to get the ball on 2 possessions or whatever the case may be. So in the divisional round where the Bills went to Kansas City, the Bills lost 36-42. Okay. 2022, Bills again go back to Kansas City. This is week 6. Bills beat the Chiefs 24-20. Bills did not get past the wild card round of that particular playoffs in the 2020 season. I believe they lost to the Bengals. And I want to say it was in Buffalo. And the Chiefs ended up winning the Super Bowl in 2022. Okay. So 2023, last season, Buffalo goes to Kansas in week 13 of the 2022 regular season. Buffalo wins 20-17. Buffalo and Kansas meet in the divisional round, this time in Buffalo. And the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, they won. It was, I think it was 22-24. Kansas City won. Chiefs ended up winning the Super Bowl last year, as everyone knows. So since 2021 in the regular season, since 21, 22, 23, and this season 24, the Bills and Chiefs have played each other in the regular season. The Bills have won each regular season matchup. However, they have lost each playoff matchup when the Chiefs and the Bills face each other. So I thought that was very interesting. And it kind of leads me to my point of, like, can we trust the Bills? And I think this is interesting because the Chiefs, for what you want to say about them during the regular season, they still find a way to get into the playoffs, and they still find themselves representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. And more than half the time, they win the Super Bowl. The Bills always come into the season with high expectations, get into the wild card divisional round, and they can't get past that. They either come up to the Chiefs or, again, the one season 2022 where they could have played the Chiefs, the Bengals knocked them off. So it's very curious to see, like, can we trust the Bills in the playoffs? I was saying a couple of weeks ago, and I believe I said it when I was talking to not only Michael from Boom Broadcasting, but also with Drew, my co-host, when he was on here, that, this Bills team feels like that they're hungrier. They feel like they're not the team that comes in with these high expectations and they've got this arrogance and that they feel like, yeah, we've got this, we're good. This felt like that because they lost Stephon Diggs, they're trying to find a new offensive identity. It felt like that they knew coming into the season they had a lot to prove. They had a chip on their shoulder, and so far they have been buzzsawing through the league. A couple of games here and there that you lose, like to the Ravens. You lose to I'm forgetting another team that they lost to. The Texans. Excuse me. They lose to the Texans, and now their third loss of the season comes to the Rams. But since then, they've been buzzsawing through the whole leagues up to this point. And so, when it comes to games that you expect them to win, can we trust the Bills? I think is a big question. They did acquire Amari Cooper, who was more involved in this game, but this game was an offensive onslaught, which kind of plays into the Bills' game plan that you would assume, but their defense just could not stop the Rams. So, when the Bills get into the playoffs, because they will get into the playoffs, they're clinched the division, so they're going to get in some form or fashion. Whoever they play, though, are they going to be prepared enough to get through a wild card round if they don't get a first round bye, the divisional round, the championship game? When they go up against, and assuming that they meet the Chiefs in whatever playoff game that they meet, can they rise to the occasion? Because right now they're a really good regular season team, but when they get to the postseason, to the playoffs, they don't carry out what they should do. They fall below expectations. And again, say what you want about the Chiefs. And as a Raiders fan, I don't like talking about the Chiefs. I'm not a fan of the Chiefs, but call it how you see it. The Chiefs win when it matters the most. Is it ugly? Yeah, but they win. That's the point, is they come out and they win, and that's coaching. They've been doing this for years. It's not new. It's just the refs bailed them out. They're the luckiest team. Yeah, they're the luckiest team for the last, 6 seasons? That's hardly luck. I mean, you don't luck into 4 Super Bowl appearances, 3 in those 4 years, potentially 3 now in a row, to where you'll have 4 in that 6-year span. Like, you don't luck into that. That's a lot of coaching. That's a lot of execution. That's a lot of playing better than opponents, So that's what I would say about the Bills is, are we able to trust them? And again, talking about the Chiefs a little bit, they officially swept the Chargers in the AFC West division. The Chiefs have won their 9th straight win that was decided by 1 score, which it's the Chiefs moniker now, is how they win. They've only had, I think, 2 or 3 games this season that were decided by more than 10 points. One of those, of course, was a loss that they had earlier this season to the Bills, ironically. But the Chiefs, again, as I mentioned, this is what they do. They outlast you. And I said this to Drew. They don't beat you in the first quarter. They don't beat you in the second quarter. They beat you in the quarter that matters. And the fourth quarter is when they show up, is when they pull away. That's what they showed against the Chargers, where they had to make plays. They made the plays. It's what they know how to do. They may not, again, be the prettiest team, but at the end of the day, you don't remember the wins and how beautifully executed these wins are. Flawless football. No, you look at the scoreboard, you look at the numbers, you look to see who has more than the other team. And at the end of the day, you see who wins it all, the championship, the Super Bowl, the mecca of it all. And it's the Chiefs. And why? Because they know how to play these gritty games, and they do the things that matter the most. And people can knock on them for it all they want. It works for the Chiefs. And, to also dismiss the Chiefs team like they're not a very well-coached team by Andy Reid, who is a Hall of Fame coach. And an argument could be made that Andy Reid is probably one of the best coaches along Bill Belichick in this generation. Like, this is the second franchise that he has taken and has won divisional championship or divisional crowns after divisional crowns, gotten them into, AFC championship games or NFC championship games. This will be his 5th trip to the Super Bowl, if he gets there for the opportunity to three-peat. He got there once before with Philadelphia. So, this is just a very well-coached team. We just don't like it because they win. We had the same issue when the Patriots won all the time with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. We just like parity. But what's frustrating is there's just no team that can compete on a team that's well-coached with a quarterback that is the best in the NFL. Whether or not they look the best, they win. So that's what I would say about the Chiefs and the Chargers and all that good stuff. So another game I thought was really fun was the Joe Burrow game when they went to Dallas and they broadcasted it as a Simpsons simulcast. And that was interesting. I don't know how I feel about NFL dabbling in all these animation graphics and all that. I mean, it looked okay, I guess, but sometimes we're getting a little too cute with football. Let's just play football. So, but anyway, as everyone saw on Monday Night Football, the Bengals outlasted the Cowboys, and it was a very interesting play, a block punt by the Cowboys, but the Cowboys receiving team went to go retrieve the ball. And rather than just let the ball die, which it would have been the Cowboys anyways on a better field, it looked like they attempted to pick it up. And the Bengals then recovered it and, got it on the other side of the 50, which sparked I think it was a 40-yard touchdown to Jamar Chase. That essentially sealed the game for the Bengals. And that's how they were able to stay up 27-20. Joe Burrow, though, I think this is another thing I wanted to talk about. His stat line, 33 for 44 for 369, 3 touchdowns. He did have 1 interception. He had 112.8 passer rating and a 75% completion percentage. 14 of those 33 receptions were to Jamar Chase, and 177 receiving yards with 2 touchdowns was Chase as well. Obviously, Jamar Chase is the overwhelming receiver, leading receiver in stats for receptions, yards, and touchdowns. He's right now ahead of the Triple Crown as we sit right before Week 15. mind you, he's playing on his last year of his deal, not paid. Bengals, for some reason, thought it was a great idea not to pay him. Hopefully he signs back with the Bengals, because if the Bengals don't have a weapon for Joe Burrow, it'll be very interesting how they are in the future. I digress, though. But anyways, it brings up an interesting thing is the Bengals are now 5-8. They have 5 more games left, and they're 3 games back of the last wildcard spot, assuming that they win out. So the Bengals' following games they have another game in Tennessee that's happening this Sunday. They play at home against Cleveland the week after that. And then week 17, they play against Denver at home in Cincinnati. And then they close the season week 18 in Pittsburgh, going against the Steelers, of course. That would be a very interesting game, because essentially, if let's say everything falls to the Bengals' way and they win out, or at least win up to week 18 to where they're playing for a position to get into the final wild card spot or the 7th seed of the AFC, can they do it? And I think it's very interesting. And then it makes me wonder, if that were to happen, let's assume Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, they just so happen to win out. They end the season with a 9-8 record, and they sneak into the 7th seed of the wild card. Would that mean that Joe Burrow is the real MVP, or would it go to Josh Allen or Saquon Barkley? Saquon Barkley, I think, is a phenomenal player, and I love the fact that a running back is getting their flowers during the MVP race, essentially, because truthfully, Saquon Barkley has made a world of difference for the Philadelphia Eagles. And even just looking on how Philadelphia has looked in the passing game, Saquon Barkley has won them games single-handedly, really helped that offense when it's struggling throwing the ball to get crucial yardage, to get crucial downs, to get extra possessions and carry on and not let a 3-and-out go, but able to burst out when it's needed and get a score when the Eagles need it, even though passing-wise, they are struggling. So Saquon Barkley deserves flowers for that alone, leading the NFL in rushing, really having a resurgence. Been phenomenal. What makes it tough, though, is Josh Allen seems to be putting out like historical games left and right, and obviously single-handedly carrying the Buffalo Bills to these impressive victories. Granted, though, the most recent game that we have of Josh Allen, where he went, I forgot to put up the stats on here, but Josh Allen essentially, again, went 6 total touchdowns, 3 rushing, 3 passing. I think he threw for over 300 and something yards. Lost that game when it mattered. Joe Burrow, though, has thrown for more yards, better completion percentage, more touchdowns. He has one more interception than Josh Allen, but I think his completion percentage is almost like 4% higher than Josh Allen. Granted, his team has a losing record, and there's been games where Joe Burrow has gotten into a shootout where he's putting up 30-plus points, or I think almost 40 points, and losing because he has a defense that is historically bad. And so, again, for the Bengals, we need a lot to fall their way. We need the defense to all of a sudden show up. We need a lot of teams that are ahead of them to fall, to even give the Bengals an opportunity. And I'm talking teams like the Ravens. And I don't think the Bengals are better than the Ravens, but that's essentially what needs to happen for the Bengals, for them to even get into the 7th seed. And so I guess then the question is, you got Josh Allen, who's having all these historical games that are keeping the Bengals relevant. And now, respectively, I think they're the 2nd seed in the AFC. But if Joe Burrow can help and continue this unbelievable season statistically that he's having, and the Bengals now win the rest of their games, even assuming that they beat the Steelers, that gives them, again, 9-8. And let's assume, let's give all the benefit of the doubt to the Bengals that they somehow get into the 3rd wildcard spot, the 7th seed, should Joe Burrow get the MVP. Because right now, Joe Burrow has arguably some of the best stats. He's thrown for, I think it's 3,700 yards, 33 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Here, I'll pull up the stats right now that I noted. So Joe Burrow has 3,200 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He has a passer rating of 107, completion percentage of 68%. Then you have Josh Allen, who has 3,000 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 101.9 passer rating, 64% completion. He does, I think the stat is 9 rushing touchdowns. So he has 30 total touchdowns, Josh Allen does, compared to Joe Burrow. But if Joe Burrow could muster up the whatever it takes to get this Bengals to play above their competition, get them into the wild card, again, giving the Bengals all benefit of the doubt, I think it's an interesting question that is Joe Burrow the real MVP of the NFL if that could all happen? Because statistically, and I said this to Drew, statistically, Joe Burrow is the MVP of the league. He's just on a losing team. And if you were to take Joe Burrow off of the Bengals, they would be the worst team in the NFL. I know that right now, draft stock wise, that's the Raiders. They have the worst win-loss record. They are currently holding the number 1 draft pick right now. So if Joe Burrow wasn't on the Bengals would be holding the number 1 draft pick right now. So it is because of Joe Burrow where they have won and been as competitive as they have been, to the point to where essentially Joe Burrow is also saving Zach Taylor's career momentarily, because let's assume that Joe Burrow isn't playing well. The Bengals are worse than their record shows. Let's say that they are 3-10, 2-11 or whatever, and Joe Burrow is not having a great season like he is right now. Zach Taylor wouldn't make it to the end of the season. But with how well Joe Burrow has been playing, Zach Taylor, it's basically saving his job. And can you imagine if Joe Burrow gets them into the wild card? Do the Bengals then bring back Zach Taylor? Because I don't think this is happening because of Zach Taylor. I truly think this is a Joe Burrow being very, very good and just absolutely putting this team on his shoulders, at least in my opinion. So I think that's an interesting conversation to have. And then carry on with week 14, just a couple of additional points here. Obviously, the Lions beat the Packers on Thursday Night Football. It was their 11th straight win, first time in franchise history that they have done that. And I put in the notes here, are they the best team in the NFL or the riskiest team? Because as everyone knows, there was that 4th down call where, Dan Campbell sent the offense back out there to get 1 yard essentially. And it started off rough because Jared Goff, got his foot stepped on by one of his O-linemen. He stumbled. He was able to hand the ball off, and they were able to still get more than a yard that they needed to get that first down. But it could have been a disaster, and they were in field goal range. So it was just a big question of how you would play that situation. And to Dan Campbell's credit, it was a gutsy play. I would say, though, for how well their defense played, how confident I am in that team as well, I'm not surprised that was a call. What I am surprised with is how much flack, I guess you can say, that Dan Campbell is getting, because, you look at some other coaches that make calls about going for 2 or going for it on 4th down multiple times, and it is an analytical game. Like, essentially, like, you're going to not get it as often as you attempt it. But when you do get those moments where you do take it and it works in your favor, it increases your win chances and all these analytical things that kind of play into it. And I'm just like, it was on the side of the field where they could have kicked a field goal. If they don't get it, they're still like in a good field position to kind of protect their end zone and really going after the Packers. I don't want to say the Packers really couldn't get anything going, but the momentum clearly was on the Lions side for this thing, or for at least this part of the game, that prompted Dan Campbell to go for it on 4th down. And if I'm being honest too, like, if you can get your defense to just kind of give them a little bit more of a lead, it lets them play in a way to where they don't have to do a bunch of pressing. They don't have to maybe go on an all-out blitz to really, get the quarterback off rhythm. They might be able to play it a little bit differently to where they can protect the field, and, the Packers have to score, and they put up 31 points, but, that 31 points came with a lot of struggle, and the Lions defense, they're a very tough unit. So it's kind of interesting to me that Dan Campbell was kind of, I don't want to say crucified, but he just got a lot more flack than I would have expected for that call. I thought it was a smart call to make, so it was kind of interesting. And then another game that I did want to point out was, the Vikings hosted Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. They went against the Falcons. Falcons got beat down 42-21. Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown an interception in 8 quarters, 4 complete games. And Sam Darnold played lights out in this game, and it's now, you got to ask the question, should Minnesota sign Sam Darnold to a long-term deal? That's a very interesting question. They just drafted JJ McCarthy, who, as everyone remembers, is out for the season because of I think he had either an ACL or a meniscus or an MCL, or he had a knee injury that took him out, and they had end of season surgery. And then, of course, Sam Darnold, you sign him for when he was with the 49ers, and I don't think the Vikings would have thought that Sam Darnold would have played this well kind of in this season. Like, I thought that they figured he'd be serviceable, but makes you kind of wonder, should we put this thing, offer a 3-year deal here to really facilitate? And if I'm the Vikings, it's very hard to find quarterbacks nowadays. This is how they know it's hard to find quarterbacks, because the Giants let go of Daniel Jones and the Vikings picked him up on the practice squad and still have JJ McCarthy. And there's an opportunity to maybe have Sam Darnold re-sign. And I think if I'm the Vikings, they are 11-2 right now with Sam Darnold and Brian Flores in that defense, Kevin O'Connell in that offense. I think you do sign Sam Darnold, and here's why. Too many times maybe, and I think this season has been a great example of that, you throw in young quarterbacks that aren't ready yet to take over a team and really get them into success. And then you end up getting your head coach on the hot seat. Like, oh, I thought this team was ready. Then you rattle the confidence of that young quarterback. And then but if you can sign a quarterback that can keep you competitive and relevant 2 to 3 seasons, and you get JJ McCarthy up to speed with maybe the playbook or play calling, the speed of the NFL game, and all this other stuff, you get them prepared kind of in a way that used to happen 15 years ago when you would draft a first-round quarterback and you'd give them time to develop and time to get used to the NFL before you kind of threw them out there. Again, this novelty of drafting somebody, top 10 and maybe even in the second round, and then just thrusting them into, an NFL team to run the team is kind of a novelty thing. I think it only started happening in the last maybe 10 years. So it's not something that has been happening often, but I would say years before that, the norm used to be you would have a quarterback that you can trust for 4 seasons, let the young quarterback who's the ascending franchise learn from under, somewhat of a mentor or, how to be an NFL player. And then you put them in the starting lineup to where they're a little bit better prepared. And, I think for the Vikings, it's probably an option here just because Vikings are probably a team that might surprise some people in the NFC postseason or in the playoffs where, whoever they meet in the wild card, maybe they're able to get past them. Maybe they meet people in the divisional round. Would we be surprised if the Vikings end up in the NFC championship game? Maybe. They've got a good defense. They've got a really good offense. I don't see why not. And to have Sam Darnold, who has gotten them this relevant in his first season there, I think is something to think about. If Sam Darnold is not retained by the Vikings, I think this opens a world of other opportunities for Sam Darnold to get signed by another team that is looking for a quarterback to make them competitive. A team that I did see, it looked like on Instagram, I think it was Gridiron. I'm forgetting the Instagram handle, but anyways, it looked like one of the best landing spots was the LA Rams, which I find very interesting because how many seasons does Matthew Stafford have? And Sam Darnold goes into LA Rams, and I believe Sam Darnold went to USC, so California kid, and gets to be coached under Sean McVay, who Kevin O'Connell came from the Sean McVay tree. So it just kind of makes all the more sense for Sam Darnold to go to a team like that. So I think it's very interesting. I think Sam Darnold has played very, very well to where basically he's going to rejuvenate his career. And I think we had a bad sample size with the Carolina Panthers where he went to and the New York Jets. Both of those teams right now are a little bit more worse for wear. I think Carolina is starting to see that Bryce Young will work out. At least he has been in the last few weeks. New York Jets, on the other hand, not so much. So, all right. Well, looks like I've got a few more minutes left in the show. I really appreciate you guys for sticking around. I'm not going to run a promo ad right now, but I will say, if you guys can go support our partner, SeatGeek, if you use the promo code DrewCode, you guys get $20 off your first order. If you go to any concert, plays or any events like that, go use SeatGeek. Great partners. Also use Fanatics if you guys are looking for any sports league memorabilia or merchandise or anything like that. In the link of this episode card, there'll be some other links to like NFL gear, WNBA, NBA, WWE stuff. So please go check out Fanatics. That'd be a huge get for us. They've been really good partners as well. And then we also have our own merch store. So, if you go to TPub, the link again down there, that's our storefront. You guys can go get some exclusive Drew Code merch, which would be really appreciative if you guys went and go and support us there as well. All right, so we're going to go into week 15 picks. I've got about looks like I've got about 8 games that I'm going to predict on. I've got some who's the favorite, so I'm just going to pick who I think is the favorite and then pick if I think they're to go over or cover or whatnot. So let's get started. Thursday Night Football, we have an NFC West matchup. We have the LA Rams traveling to San Francisco to play the 49ers, who absolutely shellacked the Chicago Bears. I figured that the Bears might win outright. I was dead wrong. But we have the Rams who had the victory over the Bills, and then the 49ers are coming in with a victory over the Bears. It's in San Francisco. So huge NFC West implications. If the 49ers can come out with a victory here, essentially they move into second place in the NFC West, and it strengthens their opportunity to maybe get close to the NFC West crown, which is being held right now by the Seahawks. Looks like the 49ers are favored here by 3. Again, this is at home. I will say, though, again, earlier this season, kind of where the beginning part of the 49ers season started to going awry was with the loss to the LA Rams. And again, it was on a last-second field goal, and that was the first divisional loss by the 49ers. I will say, though, as much as I think that the Rams and the Niners here are going to give them their best, Thursday Night Football typically favors the team that has better offense, and it doesn't necessarily play into defenses because they're beat up, and it's a lot harder for them to make stops because it's harder for them to come around on recovery time. What I will say, though, with the 49ers, how injury-riddled that they have been, again, coming off of a short week, I think offensively they can hang with the Rams. I think the Rams, though, they're riding hot, and my opinion, I like their weapons better right now than the 49ers, and it's only because the 49ers do not have Brandon Ayuk. They are not going to have Christian McCaffrey. They are not going to have Jordan Mason. The Rams are kind of coming in here healthy, and they just came off a really good close victory against the Bills, who are a playoff-bound team. The Bears are not a playoff-bound team. They are a team that are kind of, I wouldn't say a rebuild, but they have a rookie quarterback. They're probably going to have a top 15 pick. So the 49ers were kind of built to play them hard. I'm going to go with the Rams to win outright here. I like Matthew Stafford. I like that the Rams are probably have the momentum on their side to make really this push. And again, I think, you want to blame it on these 49ers injuries. They're not going to have Trent Williams, of course, who's still out because of the loss of his newborn. So 49ers are coming in again shorthanded, and it's not their fault. It's just how it is. And I think the Rams are going to win outright on this game. Next game here, we have the Dolphins traveling to Houston, playing the Texans. Houston is favored by 3. I think this is interesting because the Dolphins are kind of coming in. They did have a victory against the Jets, which I love to see. And they have been, hitting a little bit of a stride now that Tua has been back. Houston, though, has been stumbling a little bit. I had forecasted that they were going to be one of the top teams in the AFC. They do not like anything like that. They are a middle of the pack, if that. And if anything, I'm actually concerned that they are they're the weakest of the AFC teams that are probably going to be in the playoffs. Like, I'm so unconfident with them that let's just, again, assume that the Bengals sneak their way into the playoffs by hook or by crook. And let's say one of their first matchups is against Houston. I think Houston would be at risk of losing that game because I don't know if they can keep up with the Bengals, even though, again, you would assume differently because they have CJ Stroud. They have Nico Collins back. They still have Tank Dell. Joe Mixon is still there. Now, they did lose Stephon Diggs for the season. They just seem to be underperforming considering what they did last season. So with that being said, I think I'm going to still ride with Texas. I think the Houston Texans are going to outlast the Dolphins. I think this is a game where they get some confidence in beating a really good AFC team. So I have the Texans on this one, and I have them going over on the points. It's at 3, so I have them winning more by 3. Next game, this is probably one of the games of the week that's coming up for week 15. We have the Bills traveling to Detroit, playing in the Dome against the Lions. Lions are favored by 2.5 points. This is probably the one of the Super Bowl previews that we have coming up this weekend, which is such a fun matchup. Again, Josh Allen and the Bills going up against Jared Goff and that dynamic offense and that really good defense in Detroit. Again, Detroit's favored by 2.5 points. This is a tough one. I think Detroit comes out on the over. And I mean by the over, like they're probably going to win by a field goal or more, because I think that they just have too much for the Bills to withstand. They have obviously, Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, Sonic and Knuckles. I don't know how they're going to stop that, that combo, that rushing duo. Jared Goff being protected by one of the top offensive line in the entire NFL, I think is going to be really tough for the Bills to really penetrate and get to Goff. And I think he's just playing with such confidence, and the Lions and Ben Johnson just has this team really calling a great game. And I just think that the Bills, licking their wounds still from the loss against the Rams, I think Josh Allen, they're going to put up a fight. This might be a shootout more than, a defensive struggle, but I see here that the Lions are going to win this game, and I see them going over on the point spread. A second matchup here, which could be argued game of the week as well. You have the Steelers traveling to Philadelphia. Philadelphia looks like it's favored here by 5.5 points, which I'm actually a little bit surprised that the spread's about that much. But again, one of the top AFC teams going up against one of the top NFC teams, again, could be a Super Bowl preview for all we know. I'm surprised by Philadelphia's point spread here. Some of the things about this week with Philadelphia coming out with, again, Brandon Graham coming out on a podcast and saying that there's issues with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, and now all that squash, we're good. And, we had the whole Nick Sirianni controversy earlier this week when he was, talking back to his fans early in the week, shaved his head, all this other stuff. I think this is the week where, even though it's in Philadelphia, I think this is the week where the Eagles can get got. I actually have the Steelers winning this game outright, even though it's in Philadelphia. And the reason why, I trust the coaching of the Pittsburgh Steelers more than the coaching of the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, Nick Fangio is the DC coordinator right now for the Eagles. Yes, Kellen Moore is the OC for this Eagles team. The Eagles team, though, is coming up against a defensive front with the Pittsburgh Steelers and TJ Watt. It is a game-wrecking defensive front. Secondary is a little questionable, but with the issues that Philadelphia offense is having with getting the ball out, with all the weapons that they have, by the way, makes me wonder how they're going to be able to stop the Steelers defense. Now, I'm not saying that, the Steelers are going to pitch a shutout, but I do think that we can see Jalen Hurts having a couple of turnovers. Saquon Barkley will probably have his lowest rushing total of the season because, truth be told, this is probably one of the tougher matchups that the Eagles will play, not only offensively, but defensively. And I just think the Steelers come in here, no drama. They have all the momentum. And I think that they are going to be the ones that are going to come out and really put their stamp on. They are the team in that town that's going to walk out of there. I think the Eagles have a lot of noise coming out of their team internally, which is kind of weird considering that they're an 11-2 team. They shouldn't have any drama. They shouldn't have any noise. And yet they have all this ruckus coming out of there, and it's very distracting, very concerning. So all that being said, I see the Pittsburgh Steelers here coming out and just winning outright in Philadelphia, even though Philadelphia has the 5.5 point, spread in their favor. I think the Steelers are going to come out and claim victory and win outright in this one. And then the next one, this is just more AFC implications and, NFC South implications as well. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to LA to play the Chargers. Chargers are favored by 3 here. Depends if the Chargers can get back Ladd Conkley. I think then the Chargers look really, really good. The Buccaneers maybe have a lot more to play for just because they are in a position where they're kind of jockeying for position against the Falcons. They did come off of a good win against the Raiders, in Tampa. So we'll see how that all shakes out. If I had to say, I think I would have the Chargers coming on top in this one. I have them going over on the points in this one. A lot of the reasons why I like the coaching a little bit better. I think the defense is going to give Tampa Bay a little bit more issues for especially that pass front with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield threw 2 interceptions to the Raiders. I feel like the Chargers pass front, obviously healthier. I like them a little bit more in this matchup. And I think the Chargers can come out of here going over on the spread of that 3-point favoritism there. And then we have Sunday Night Football. We have the Green Bay Packers traveling to Seattle playing the Seahawks, which I think is very interesting because Seahawks need this win against Green Bay to continue their lead on the NFC West. And essentially, if they can get this win and pull themselves to 9-5, they'd essentially, for all intents and purposes, almost clinch the division, at least away from the 49ers, if there was to be, a tie between the Niners and the Rams after Thursday Night Football. And then the Packers really need this to kind of stay relevant within the NFC and not falter and lose out on one of those wild card positions. Because right now where they're at, I think they're in the wild card 2 spot. So if they lose, and that kind of gives maybe the Commanders a little bit more room to climb up and get a higher seed. And I don't think the Packers are going to lose out on a playoff spot, but you don't ever want to go into the playoffs not having momentum on your side. So Packers are favored in this one by 3, even though it's in Seattle. I think I like those numbers, and I'm going to trust in that. I think even though they had a tough loss against Detroit, they did kind of have a mini bye, kind of get themselves on the other side of feeling healthy, get them a pretty good game plan against this Seahawks team. I'm curious to see how the Seahawks respond, if they can continue on this streak that they've been on. But again, Seahawks have been kind of suspect all year. So I trust the Packers a little bit more. So I have the Packers to go over on this point spread here. And then we have one of 2 Monday Night Football games. We have the Chicago Bears traveling to Minnesota, going against the Vikings. Vikings are favored by 7 points. I know that Drew, normally that would make him a little bit worried, but what I would say is, with all the issues that we understand about Chicago and with all the momentum going into Minnesota, I think I would take the over on the points for Minnesota playing against Chicago, going to Minnesota. I think Minnesota just has all this momentum. They essentially would be leading the division if the Lions, had another loss. And in theory, let's say the Bills do knock off the Lions, they would essentially be tied with the Minnesota Vikings. So I see Minnesota here coming out with some urgency and doing what they can to get them the best position that they can. Because assuming the Lions hold the divisional crown where they're at today, the Vikings are going to be in a position where they're going to be fighting for the number 1 wildcard spot, which means they're going to be playing, I believe it's the 2nd seed in the NFC, whoever that might be. So that would be a very interesting matchup. And I think they're going to, again, want that momentum on their side and all those other factors. So I like Minnesota, even though it's 7 points, it's a little much with how the Bears played against the 49ers. I think Minnesota is on the level with the Niners. I think maybe even a little bit better. So I think Minnesota has this one. So I'm going to take the over on the points for Minnesota. And then this one is actually very interesting. Falcons coming to Vegas to play the Raiders. Falcons are favored by 4 points. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Kirk Cousins has not thrown a touchdown in 4 games, 8 quarters. And I think he's actually thrown 8 interceptions in that same time frame. So just a little interesting note. However, again, the Raiders did play Tampa Bay. They lost, I believe it's 28-14, I think is the score. We did lose AOC for the foreseeable future to a bone bruise in his knee. So Desmond Ridder is essentially having a revenge game against the Falcons. I don't know what we have in Desmond Ridder. I don't know. Would I like to see my Raiders win this game? Yes. Should they? No. We have the number one pick right now. If we hold this number one pick, we are probably going to draft Shedeur Sanders. For all intents and purposes, that's what the Raiders want to do. Even if you're a Raiders fan and you would much rather have Cam Ward, okay, great. We still don't know though if we had if we had the number 2 pick. Let's just play this out. If we had the number 2 pick, and assuming the Giants had the first overall pick, we do not know if they're going to go Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and who knows what quarterback the Raiders would prefer. At this point right now, with the number 1 pick, we hold our destiny in our hands. So yeah, I would love to look competitive. Like the last few games, our defense has been playing really well. We've been getting after the quarterback. We've created turnovers. We fight hard, and then it looks like the scoreboard shows that we're a worse team than what we showed on the field, and yet we're currently holding the number 1 pick. I do think that the Falcons overall win this game. Would I love to say that the Raiders cover? I would love to say that, but the last few games have shown that that's not the case. So I have the Falcons going over in points. If is this the game, I'd love to be wrong and be able to hold my chest out high for the Raiders beating the Falcons. Yes, because I feel like the momentum has gone away from the Falcons, and they're getting into a level now where maybe it's time to think about throwing in Michael Penix Jr. to see if they can jumpstart their playoff hopes, because Kirk Cousins' mania was looking real good early in the season, but now he's kind of come back down to earth. And you have, a rookie quarterback that you drafted, I think, 10th overall. Is it time to put him in? I think is a big question. The Raiders were so injury riddled on both sides of the ball, literally running a 4th string running back in Sincere McCoy. No, wait. Is that his name? Sincere McCormick, I think is his last name. Very good running back, by the way. So I don't mean to disrespect by not knowing his name, but point being is we're so injury riddled that's where we're at. So I think that the Falcons in this one are going to win, and they're going to go over the 4-point spread. So, all right, guys, that is it for me for Drew Code. I really do appreciate you guys tuning in, sticking around. I don't know if Drew has a Stingers Up episode queued up yet. I will have to double check with him. I'm sure he has one coming up. Singer West Hornets girls varsity had a really good game last Thursday that he did talk about on the show. Again, he had his game on Monday. I believe they have another game tomorrow. I'm not quite sure about that. So, if you're trying to stay up to date with Singer West stuff, definitely follow their pages, but also to stay tuned for Stingers Up. I'm very, very confident Drew has one somewhere in the chamber. I just don't think he has finished it quite yet. So just be on the lookout for that. But for us here at Drew Code Sports Talk, I really do appreciate you guys tuning in. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to us on the podcast side of it so you can listen to us on the audio side, and also follow us on all the social medias. Again, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook, Blue Sky. We're also on there. So really appreciate a follow there to follow our journey and to go back and forth with us. So I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. Please be kind to one another, and I will see you guys next week. See ya.